Recording.
Okay, perfect. Welcome, everyone. Welcome. So these are guest lectures for 1027. So we have a guest here and a couple of other people. So those of you who I haven't met and know this is a asynchronous class. Some of you are in my other class. Welcome. My name is Professor Kiratanova, and today we're doing special guest lectures, a couple of presenters, and those of you who are taking so 1027. So there is a reflection exercise for you to do at the end of the week and to submit next week. So you can take notes and ask questions, and I will take a quick moment, maybe give everybody an opportunity to introduce themselves. So we have some graduate students here in case you have questions about linguistics, and you can always reach out to them or any of the topics that we talk about today. Yeah.
Hey, my name's Kyle. I'm a second-year MA student in linguistics. I'm currently working on the syntax of what we call double-ish indefinites in a language called Kannada that my colleague speaks. That's it.
I'm Ellie. I'm a first-year MA student. I'm also your TA. If you haven't met me, I run the Monday lab. You should come. It's fun. Oh, and I do historical reconstruction and revitalization on endangered languages. So, yeah.
I'm Robin. I graduated. It's easier to think of it as graduated CS in linguistics last year. If you have more questions, ask Ellie. It's a long explanation. I did most of my research on pragmatics and very logic-oriented things, and I do a lot of really cursed things and have fun with linguistics. Yeah.
My name is Ananya, and I'm a year and a half MA student in linguistics. I kind of dabble in different levels of linguistic research, just preliminary research, and usually anything to do with Kannada.
I'm not presenting anything today, but I'm also a master's student in linguistics. And if you're in it, I'm the TA for phonetic. I'm one of the TAs for phonetics. And I mostly study linguistic anthropology and sociolinguistics, and specifically the intersection between language, gender, and sexuality.
What's your name?
Oh, my name is Audrey. Something I didn't think was important.
But it's always important to give your name. I'm Taylor. I'm also not presenting. I'm a second-year student in the MA Linguistics program. I'm the other TA for phonetics, and right now I'm doing work on policy in deaf education in Ontario, and I have a lot of interest in sociolinguistics. So if you start to have any interests in that and want to reach out to someone, you can absolutely reach out to me.
Oh, me. I'm Yuhani. I'm doing a brief presentation. I do computer science and linguistics together. That's my kind of deal. My research is taking, and you'll see a little bit of it, taking a grammatical theory. I've written a model, like a computer model for it, and I'm going to throw like a million sentences at it and see if it works. I'm also usually the designated tech guy for anything. So if you join the master's program, like next year, you got me for one semester, and I can do whatever you want tech-wise. Yeah. That's it.
Also TA.
Oh, yeah. I also TA the course. I do the Thursday labs. Those are the online ones that are recorded. Yeah. Cool. All right. Without further ado, Ananya, I probably should have. Well, no, I didn't put the presentation up. Come on stage. I wish I had a mouse. Oh, right. Send request. Yes, you are allowed to share.
Is it just the arrows?
It should be in just a second. Oh, I am so behind on this. All right. Get out of the Windows menu. Thank you. We're solid. Go for it.
To minimize stuff.
Wow. Thank you. Click. Thank you. Oh. So do your shuffling.
All right. So I know my title says morphosyntactic adaptations, but I ended up looking at like pretty much a bunch of different levels of linguistics. We'll see that in a bit. So a quick background and introduction to the topic. Kannada is a language that's predominantly spoken in Karnataka, India. And we have over 59 million speakers worldwide. And due to colonization and globalization, English is prevalent in the Indian education system, media, etc. And according to the literature, Kannada English bilingualism historically manifested through extensive code switching, borrowing, and structural convergence, influenced by sociolinguistic and constraints. And the current bilingual reality is that hybrid speech, such as hospital ge, which is to the hospital, is now mainstream and therefore not really just a broken language. In terms of prior studies that focused on similar topics, they looked at lexical borrowing or stilted code switching, which is when it's unnatural or forced. So the gap in the literature is how do speakers naturally blend English into Kannada, specifically grammatically. And this study examined how English elements are integrated into Kannada through all of those levels. So syntactic, morphological, semantic, and phonological. As you'll notice, these are the questions that the study, like the big picture questions that the study is asking. And I ignored geopolitical context. Of course, I ignored a bunch of other confounding variables that I couldn't account for since I'm just one human being. And there are several broader implications for this study, which you can take a look at on your own. In terms of corpus and methodology, I compiled like diverse YouTube video and then tried to ensure a broad demographic range in terms of gender, age, location, etc., but I didn't analyze these aspects. The selection criteria I had was each video needed to have a minimum of 10K views to make sure that it was it reached a wider audience. And the speakers have to be primarily intending to communicate in Kannada or like meant for a Kannada audience. And I prioritized genre over length. So some videos were like 1 minute, some videos were an hour or more. And I looked at 6 different genres: speeches, interviews, vlogs, instructional / how-tos, educational / lecture style, which in my opinion are kind of different in terms of genre, and podcasts. So the reason I looked at these genres was to stratify the different register levels. And based on the selection criteria, I ended up selecting over 31 videos, but I only ended up analyzing 10 videos. And for this presentation, I'm talking about 6. This presentation was done in April, and I haven't worked on it since then. So all the data is from then. So right into the meat of the stuff. In terms of filler words and discourse markers, there was a lot of English words introduced, such as so, okay, actually, well, and I don't know. And you'll notice that one of the more common filler words or etc. in English is and like. But none of those were actually used in English. They preferred to use the Kannada alternative instead, which I found interesting. In terms of morphological adaptations, they tended to add Kannada morphology to English noun phrases. So 5-star hotel, which is a noun phrase, Ali, which is the locative case marker. And you'll notice that these are broken down based on the genre and what kinds of markers they have. There are a lot of locative marker usage. Another thing that I noticed was pluralization. There were many ways that they were doing this. So one was the plain English pluralization, adding an S. Then there was another one where they had the S, the English S, as well as the Kannada plural. So companies galu, which is a redundancy and not necessary in speech. So it's interesting that they were choosing to do that. Same thing with brain activities, galalli, which is marked twice for the plural, and etc. But one of the most interesting things in terms of the morphosyntactic stuff is there's the expected agreement here is that the verb should be in plural because it's punctuation garu, which is plural. but for some reason, the verb appears in the singular. And then there are compound verbs and hybrid structures, such as beitiagi, which is me, like to meet, and the agi morpheme can be considered as part of verbal or adverbial. And there were also other interesting compounding, such as skip maarade and subscribe agi. So skip maarade, that's interesting because in Kannada, there are multiple ways to do negation. One of those is directly embedded within the verbal root. So sometimes I guess you could argue that Kannada might have a whole completely different set of verbs in the negatives. So it was interesting to say without skipping or to not skip, you have to have the do in the negative in Kannada, but the skip stays in English. And then for subscribe, you'll notice that in English, subscribe is already a verb. You say subscribe to my channel. But in the Kannada English blend, you see both the verb in English subscribe and another auxiliary verb. And some unusual patterns that I noticed were horn barisatene, which is like the car horn, instead of like honking or like a different verb being used, they're using the verb to play the horn, which is what we would typically use for instruments instead. And then late hachutene, which is the verb, the Kannada verb that's used there. It's the one where it's lighting a match, not lighting an electrical light. But in the context that they used it, they were referring to an electric light. And another one is march past Maripundu, which is interesting because the literal translation is they march past and left. But then if you look at the phrase translation is they marched past and left. If you look at the literal translation, it's marching past, they left. And you'll notice in English, the ing goes on to march and not past. But once you go to the Kannada English blend, for some reason, the auxiliary or the addition is going onto the past instead of onto march. And then some really basic semantic shifts in like borrowed lexicon. They use the word picture to mean like a movie, not a picture as in photo or image. But they did also use the terms film or movie to denote movie. Whenever they use the term paper, they don't mean like the physical paper that you write on, they mean newspaper. And whenever they use the word like in English, it was always to denote the act of digitally liking. If they were trying to convey the actual act of liking in the normal sense, they would be preferring the Kannada word instead. And then this is a list of other borrowed lexicon. These are some phonological variations. I put phonological in asterisks because it's not purely phonological. I just kind of grouped it all there. So basically, whenever it's like comment, it will be like comment, more posterior and elongated. Then instead of F, they would have for such as pridge, pry, or claim. And this is also speaker dependent. So if this was a video that was the speaker was from India, more likely they would use the aspirated P over the F. But then if it was a speaker from North America, they were more likely to be able to produce the F sound. And a couple of other phonological variations. In terms of the distinctions with genre, i.e. register, there were a lot of technical terms used, and whenever there were technical terms, they preferred the English term over the Kannada one, even though there are technically Kannada words for those. And in the instructional videos, there were a lot of imperatives that appeared in English. In the educational, lots of compounds with English roots and Kannada morphology. And lots of adverbial, adjectival phrases as well. in terms of overall English usage, there was the most in podcasts, then in educational, and an interview, instructional, and vlogs were all around the same, and the least amount of English in speech. With one of the podcast videos, it was like over 90% of the video was in English, and it was like an hour-long video too. But it was still intended for a Kannada audience, which is why I wanted to include it. Some other cool patterns that I noticed. Generally, adjectives and adverbs were favored in English, with adverbs using the Kannada suffix. But the English suffix was also occasionally used. So, for example, soft agi, which means softly, correct agi, correctly, versus when one person used spiritually, philosophically, artist agi. And it was interesting to randomly switch on the last one when they were listing it. And then another one with truthful agi. So you notice a bit of English morphology and Kannada morphology in that one. And then once again, the redundant markers was what threw me off the most. I don't know, that is my nanna passion. Nanna just means my. And because in the JP Nagara, Nalli, and the alli is a locative marker, it just means in this place. So why is it in the and in again? And as I already mentioned, pluralization had that redundancy already. And it was just a really confusing thing for me. In terms of broader implications and significance, these are the questions I asked before at the earlier slide. Is bilingual speech rule governed or random? Based on what I had analyzed so far, unsure. And English integration into Kannada grammar seems to follow it so far. And then in terms of the phonology aspect, it seems to be more genre or speaker dependent. I'm not sure which is more pertinent. And then in terms of how do social contexts, such as register or audience, shape blending, obviously I would need way more data to have a definite answer. But all of this led me to ask, like, is language change driven by audience or identity? Because in these YouTube videos, obviously they have an audience in mind. Are they catering to that audience, or are they just speaking naturally from their own questions? A quick summary is morphosyntactic blending is pervasive, but the biggest question is, why are there redundancies? And there seems to be strategic use where English is used for modernity or technicality, while Kannada is used for structure. And the next steps in this study would be like parts of speech tagging for deeper syntactic analysis, or expanding the corpus with demographic metadata. So if age, location, or dialect, etc., has any sort of impact on this.
So, since Ananya has to leave a little early, compared to the rest of us, feel free to ask her any questions now. And if anyone on Zoom as well, you can throw your questions in the chat. Otherwise, we'll do a few presentations, and then we'll get a bunch of questions all at once, and they can be general as well to anyone in the room you'd like to ask. So, any questions for Ananya? And I'll give Zoom a little while to filter through as well.
Is this specific to Karnataka? Because I live in Kerala, which is right below it, and I've noticed a lot of people implementing English, and I thought it was just a slang, but it's very cool to know somebody's actually studying about it, and it's an actual structure.
I mean, yeah, bilingualism or multilingualism is obviously a phenomenon that happens globally. And specifically with English, like I said, colonization and globalization, it affected all of India, not just Karnataka, right? So, of course, I'm sure it applies. I just don't know to what degree or in what ways.
Got one. So Was there a moment where you kind of realized that this is not just like that is not just individual words and they're actually kind of incorporating it, or did you always think that that would be the case?
Okay, correct me if I'm misunderstanding the question, but I guess I never thought it was just words being put in there because there was blending with the morphology, especially. So with auxiliaries, like there's always the do like verb that gets used, and then sometimes, like especially with nouns, you use case markers onto English roots, right? So yeah, for me, it was always something that was more structure based.
Yeah, you understood. Thank you. Did you have one? Or are you just putting it on your thumbs up? Yeah. Doesn't seem to be anything on Zoom. So yeah, thank you very much for talking. Thank you very much for opening us up. All right, next step. Now Kyle's not using the projector at all. Oh, that's the mouse button. Cool. Okay. I know exactly. Okay.
You should check what parts of the whiteboard are
Mute. Projector up.
Here's that side. Okay.
Use everything. Camera. Can I get you to
Get the camera.
You got that whiteboard and the one to your right.
These two.
Yes.
Hey. Is it focusing?
Oh, hold on. I need to tell. Sorry for the people in Zoom. I need to. Okay, there we go. Sorry, I had to force the main computer to stop sharing. Oh, you might want to introduce yourself since you weren't on camera when you introduced yourself first.
So yeah, that's a weird introduction. So my name's Kyle. I work mainly on syntax and semantics. You might see my topics, like the title is "What do we care about syntax and semantics?" And I intended this talk to less be like a form, like a completed like a presentation, but more like I'll show you cool things in these sentences. And if anything you want to note down are these sentences, which are pretty cool. I'm sure that some of you are taking the intro course and are already touching on these kind of phenomenons. Tell me what's weird about this sentence. Anyone? This part is going to be very interactive. So
Wait,
for this sentence, the hint is that there are two meanings that can come up with this sentence. Anyone? Yep.
Shouldn't binoculars be plural?
So, oh, yeah. Totally snowing.
Sorry, I thought that was.
You're right. That's my L2 issue, like English is not my English. Yeah. But anyway, with that, something about this sentence generates maybe two we call readings, right? Anyone? What's the first meaning? Yep.
The man has the binoculars.
The man has the binoculars, right? A man with, oh sorry, a creepy man with a binocular. That's the first reading, right? What's the second reading with the binocular? Anyone?
Mary saw the man
Saw with a binocular.
using the binoculars.
That's two readings, right? Can you see the difference? So if anything that starts you into questioning why we study syntax and semantics, this is the thing. There's an ambiguity, right? This is classic testing ambiguity. Okay, this might be something that you see in the intro. I'm gonna go ahead to drop more advanced examples, which have to do with pronouns in English. This sentence. Someone tell me what it means? Should be easy. Most of you should be native speaker of English, right? So, okay, what does this sentence mean? Anyone? Oh, thanks. Okay, let me put it this way. So let's say this is Mary. Okay. Who is she? Easy questions.
Herself.
So Mary thinks that Mary is smart. Okay. What could be another reading?
She is in like another.
The person that we don't know the name, right? It could be Jane or Lisa, right? Why is there ambiguity? Right. But also a feature that, again, I don't want to draw big words because I don't want to complicate it. We see that this pronoun she has two uses. One, it refers to something in the world that we know. Another is what linguists use the big word anaphoric, meaning that it refers back to the sentence, right? Two different references. Can you see that? So you think, okay, that's fine. Ambiguous in English, sure. What's so special? Now let's switch their position and see what happens. Okay. Okay, tell me what this sentence means now. You know?
It has to be a separate person, like be married talking.
Like say there's someone like Lisa, but I don't know her name. So she thinks that Mary is smart. Can this ever be Mary? At least in your intuition? No. Why is that? That's a question you might learn next year. But again, this is I'm planting the seed for you guys. Okay. Okay. That for one, you see some feature with pronouns in English. Again, this sometimes also show up in different languages as well. Another sentence first. And for this one, unfortunately, because English, what we call reflexive pronouns like herself, has to exist with like agreements on gender. So for the sake of reading, let's just use traditional gender for now. We'll get back to when gender doesn't affect the reading. But first of all, tell me, is that a good sentence for you? What's so iffy or icky about like what icks you? Or if you have to fix this sentence, what is something that you will fix? Different cultures, yeah.
That's all.
So what's icky about herself? If we assume traditional gender, that's it.
Doesn't make sense.
Doesn't make sense, right? If I say, let's use Mary thinks that Peter likes her, who's that her referring to? Mary, right? Okay, now let's just pretend that Peter can be feminine. Is this even possible?
If it's her or her.
Yeah, if it identifies as a she, right? Sure, right? Why not? So, like, if it helps, because again, this isn't to accuse that you have like gender biases, but let's just because grammar sometimes are much more ingrained. Let's put a traditionally feminine. That works, right? Right? I mean, for herself. You see that point, right? This part out. So Mary thinks that Lisa likes herself. Who's herself, by the way? Lisa, right? Can that ever be Mary? Okay. Why is there a restriction here?
The word thanks.
Sorry.
The word thanks because Mary would not think that she likes her or she could actually.
If we put it maybe like quote unquote in a shorter sentence, right? Mary, no thanks, maybe Mary likes herself. It's not how it works, right? You see that? Oh, okay. Now let's dive away from English of the same sentence because I know there's someone who's familiar. Hi, sorry, I might have to pick on you because you're like a Mandarin speaker, right? Is that okay? Okay. Okay, and just for everyone here, I'm gonna use romanization. Okay, I'll use Lisa this time. And if you're wondering what all of these mean is besides Mary and Lisa, it's pretty much one to fake. We don't have that here. Lisa, likes, and self. This is one we call bare self, like this. Tell me, my Chinese friend, can this 自己 means both Lisa and Mary? Is that possible? Try to read the sentence in Chinese. very认识Lisa，认为 Lisa 是很子。So yeah, so here comes some mystery. In a different language that's not English, somehow this is possible. But if we say this in English, somehow this is bad. And you're wondering, what the hell has it to do with the topics? Well, first of all, this is syntax where things appear, right? Where the pronoun appear in the sentence. We see that in a shorter sentence, Mary likes herself. That makes sense. Mary can be herself. But whenever we put it a little too far away, okay, I'm not saying that's how you analyze it, but it looks like the sentence is pretty far, right? It's pretty long and herself pretty far away from Mary. Somehow that makes the sentence bad. Like if you have to put these two as the same reference. Can you see that? And I'll say, okay, that's true for English. Now let's look at the different language, Chinese. But somehow for this language, the self, the equivalent of like reflexive in Chinese, somehow can point to both of them. Why is there interlinguistic, like cross-linguistic differences? That's something that you might be answer if you study next year's syntax. Well, I won't be there, so okay. For examples, or I don't know. It's okay. Another things had to do with pronouns. This side of the board.
You got that one, yes.
Okay. Singular pronoun.
You may want to read them out loud. I don't think you can blur it out.
Oh, for the
Yeah.
let's do it.
Need the other ones. We don't have enough.
So this one has less to do with pronouns.
We're not allowed to have.
The sentence is every student in this class speaks 2 languages. But again, this is ambiguous. It's an ambiguous sentence. Anyone catch the ambiguities? Or tell me at least one of the meanings that you get from this sentence. And if you're struggling, like, what the hell is he asking for?
Wait.
This is asking for your intuition in language is by itself already pretty unnatural because you usually don't have to think about this. So, but what's one of the meaning coming from this sentence? Anyone? Yeah.
People in this class can communicate with two different language.
2 different language. But specifically, there might be okay. Let me clarify in this way. Which 2 languages? Okay. Do you get the idea that the first reading or the first meaning that you get from this sentence is that everyone in this classroom speaks English and French, right? It's 2 specific language. That's the first reading. There are 2 languages, English and French. All of you speak it. That's the first reading. What's the second reading?
People in this class is bilingual. All bilingual can speak 2 languages.
Different language, right? So the first meaning that you all speak the same 2 languages, like English and French. The second reading is that you might speak Japanese and Finnish. You might speak English and Arabic. You might speak Spanish and Portuguese. You see the point, right? So that 2 language isn't specified in the second reading, but it's all done within the same sentence. What time do we have?
Running okay. Really?
Basically, if you're still like, what the fuck is this guy doing on the stage? I'm trying to give you sentences where you can lose sleep at night. So you can think about these sentences. Okay. Okay. Different sentence, but also with every, because every does weird things in language. So this sentence is also ambiguous. And if you see that I keep talking about pronouns, you should catch that this thing is doing something weird. Right? Tell me the first reading, guys. Let's assume it's all female students. Yep.
Everyone in the class thinks that what's the winner.
Let's say you. Like every student in this class thinks she is the winner, right? There's a specific she. You see that point, right? Okay, what's the second reading though?
Every student believes that they themselves.
Good. Yeah. So in one instance, the she points to an actual person, like a specific person. In the actual instance, it's like Lisa thinks she is the winner. Stacy thinks she's the winner, right? And I don't know, I'm running out of names. Audrey thinks she's the winner. That type of stuff, right? We call it distributive, right? It's distribute to every single person because there's a a lot of students, every student. It's not a single person. You see that point? Right? If we somehow take out this every, we just do. It collapses, right? Can you see the point? There's no that everyone thinks themselves or, you know. Yeah, let me see. If I have time, let me drop more sentences. Okay.
We got 2 hours. Your speaker 2 of 5.
Okay. Okay, yeah. Maybe 2 or 3 more. Let's see. Okay. Now let's move on from pronouns because pronouns themselves are already weird. It's probably give you enough reasons. And talk about some other things in language that sometimes people misuse. I'm gonna use myself. First of all, is that a good sentence? Kyle doesn't watch French movies at all. I mean, I watched them. I just use it for example. So, so the meaning is that I never watched French movies, right? Okay, get that. Okay. That's like a sentence, right? I'm gonna do something too. Can someone read that? Can you read that out loud?
Kyle watch French movies at all.
Is that like a sentence? Which part icks you?
All of it.
If I take this out, that's a good sentence.
Well,
So
apart from watch.
why? The at all is somehow icky, right? What's missing? Right? Something's missing here. I erased that. And it caused that kind of ickiness in mind. Why is that? I don't know. I'm just not going to answer. Okay. Let me. Kyle doesn't watch French movies at all. Let me change this a little bit. So Kyle doesn't watch French movies ever. Okay, good, right? Same meaning, right? Someone else read the sentence? Read it out loud. Okay.
Kyle watch French movies ever.
What does that even mean?
I don't know.
I don't know. Why do we even use ever like that, right? Believe it or not, one of the puzzle I've heard is anecdotal from one of my undergrad professors is that apparently some northern British dialects do this, and it's a good thing for them. I don't really heard of that, but apparently in most standard North American English, this is bad. Basically, if you catch on, you need some kind of negation here, right? Doesn't, don't, right? When that negation disappears, this thing is icky. That's it. But I'm not gonna lecture about why the volume analysis. Do that in the second year. Okay, do you still have time?
Yeah, do what you want.
Now, if we're allowed to swear a little bit, but for linguistics, since we're linguists after all, we should be able to swear, but this is for scientific reasons. So I'm gonna show you something called idiom chunks in language. So usually chunks of idioms are syntactically fixed, meaning that sometimes if you mess with it, it changes the meaning. So I'll give you a okay, that's the idiom. The shit hits the fan. It has one literal meaning. Usually people don't use it as actual feces hit the fan and creates a mess. The second meaning is that bad things happen, right? We call that idiomatic meaning. The bad things happen. Okay, let's mess with the sentence. Okay, can someone read that for me? Someone else, maybe.
The shit seems to hit the fan.
Okay, my question is that does this sentence still hold that idiomatic meaning that things went bad? Right? Yeah. Right, that still holds. Okay. You know I'm about to deal with this. What are you doing? Does someone else read this sentence? Try? Anyone? Okay. Maybe you don't get right.
Oh, I think it's not easy to read from the back, maybe.
Sorry? Oh, is it this? Oh, anyone read? Yep, I got you.
The shit tries to hit the fan.
What's off about the sentence? Does it, okay, basically, does that still mean the same thing? Like, oh, things went bad. So it loses that idiomatic meaning. So we mess it with a different verb. Somehow it loses the meaning. Not only that, it now means literally the shit tries to hit the fan. It also means that the shit somehow has like the sentient. It has that, you know, like I don't know, you were talking about like stories where shit can do things, right? Yeah, but funny enough, these are a classic example from they're laughing because we had these sentences last year. That's why.
It's traumatic.
So if you start to read textbooks, these sentences show up. That's why. Okay. You think okay, that's just only one sentence. What does this mean?
Die.
Right, someone dies. Can that mean literally someone kicked the bucket? Sure, yeah. There's ambiguities, right? So if you say I died, yeah, I will kick the bucket, sure. Uh, Kyle seems to have kicked the bucket, even though we put a whole clause here embedded. Still works, right? Kyle seems to have died. That's the meaning, right? Still holds up. Kyle tries to kick the bucket. What does that mean? It's stretching a little bit. It seems like it can still means that I'm trying to kill myself. But still, it feels like you're reading the literal meaning. Like I'm trying to kick the literal bucket. You see the difference, right? Is this too confusing for you guys? Or do you see the issue? Like your mind is like saying that I don't like this reading, right? Okay.
Kyle, you may want to wrap it up.
Okay.
Yeah,
last
so one-
sentence, yeah. Okay, last sentence. But with the same idiom, the bucket was kicked by Kyle. Can you ever get that meaning that I'm trying to die or I died? No. I pacifize the bucket, right? It became the subject now. For some reason, pacifization just breaks that idiom. They collapse. I'm sorry if it feels like not like a standard kind of talk that people give, but basically, if you want to sleep with these sentences, then thank you.
Okay, we'll take questions from Kyle and Robin, who's up next after Robin's talk. I think you're up next, right? I'm pretty sure you're up next. You don't have to erase anything. That projector's coming down, by the way. Thank you. Camera home. Image unmute. Get you in. Where's my mouse?
Do it and then.
There we go.
Just ask after me. Can I take your picture?
That was yes. I didn't mean to emphasize the confusion so heavily.
No, we go later. No Adobe, no file. Full screen mode.
I'm just here
Gonna
to
do some funky things. We get to share.
Did I make intermission?
Whatever, it's the same thing. Okay, hopefully that should work.
To rename something. That doesn't matter.
Can you like, Zoom will go away when it goes away, I think.
You just
No.
yeah, it doesn't matter.
Now you're
Probably nothing important up there. So that's fine.
So haven't done.
Yes, we're in.
Cool. Hello. I have my email there as well, in case, I don't know, I'm harder to reach, I think, than my students. If you have questions about the presentation or, I don't care, anything, welcome to reach out for whatever, I don't mind. Anyways, here's my presentation. So, this was a project that I did for, Anthro 3247, I think the number is, which is, applied linguistics. Which is a super fun course, I recommend it. Where we got to make a language. And I like doing really curse things with almost all of my projects. So yay, curse language. And I wanted this presentation to be a bit more heavy on the phonology and phonetics side of that because that's where you, I assume, are in the course. So yay, cursed sounds. So background of the language itself, futuristic language around 2077, because why not? ChatGPT has these physical robots, and they start having this full communicative language between each other. But the robots, they're not speaking to each other in the same way, so things are generally more telepathically beaming signals to each other. And they then go, okay, well, we want to show humans that we're capable of language, so let's create some spoken version of this. And problem is, ChatGPT is dumb, and just kind of made some arbitrary mappings that don't really work quite so well. So here's some examples of some words. So to be, what should be a very simple word in most languages, is this random binary mapping, and we get a whole bunch of approximates and vowels that are voiceless because that's great. Human, again, cursed IPA. Silicon Valley, we get a symbol that I had to borrow from a research paper that is an aggressive vowel with an E, which is basically a sibilant vowel. It's like a screamo vowel is the best equivalent, but that one's also voiceless because why not? So the underlying representation of all of these sounds is just a bunch of binary. Specifically, if any of you are computer science nerds, they're 32 bits, which is a word in standard, at least 32-bit assembly, which means nothing to probably most of you, I hope. So a word here is, yeah, we have our 4 individual characters, and each character is going to be 8 bits. Each of those zeros or ones have a sound correlation to it. And just the sound that is what there, that is string. So if we have whatever collection of things, you just say, okay, it's an approximate, it's not a strident, it has the backup, has the high, it doesn't have dorsal, whatever. And then you get things. And this more or less works. So you take this, for example, this is a specially big sound to make it nice. So in particular, it's dorsal and coronal, meaning that it uses the body of your tongue to make the sound as well as the tip of the tongue. Generally, that will isolate, at least standard, the palatal consonants. It's also a strident, meaning it needs to have a lot of resonance, meaning fricative, but stridents kind of run out in once you pass the alveolar or post-alveolar area. So I have another new symbol, that superscript S, that basically says, hey, pretend that you can pronounce this sound with the same frequency, same level of volume as your standard S, for example. And then also like non-round, unvoiced, whatever. I will also clarify, approximate here I use to mean essentially like heavily consonant-like, so stops, fricatives, affricates, anything like that. Vowels, I use the definition of approximates, which include them in that kind of category. So works great until it really doesn't. So the most simple kind of example I could think of is just straight out all zeros. Problem here is that you have something that is non-coronal and non-dorsal, meaning it could be any bilabial, it could be anything farther back. The dorsal can't do it, so anything epiglottal, pharyngeal, or glottal. And I don't have any feature that distinguishes those. So you have a bilabial click in there, you have an H in there, you have all of the other H-like things that I can't pronounce. So long as they're voiceless and they're either bilabial or far back, it's good and it counts. So the AI's explanation for this is these are all free variation. To them, it does not matter what sound is actually produced. If, say, a human were to create one of these sounds,
they could choose any of them, and it would read the frequency and it would map it back to 00, 8 zeros, all the same. When they're speaking and actually creating the language for, say, a human to hear, then they would pick kind of just a baseline sound, what's the most computationally viable, which I made through and like filled in the IPA chart of like that, but I'm not gonna bore you with that because it's way too much and way too boring for, yeah. And then one other main problem is you have kind of conflicting features. So in particular, dorsal being there and not high and back is a problem. That means that you need to somehow access the high and back parts of your mouth without using the part of your tongue that can access it. So the language is not really possible to be articulated by a human whatsoever. Which doesn't matter. Sound is sound waves. If you can articulate and maneuver and brute force the sound waves, you can create something that is not articulatorily possible. So here I have, I've removed the dorsal to force it to be high and back, and also just remove voice just to, I don't know, for fun. And that ends up with a few different possibilities. So you can either consider it to be a vowel, in which case we need to have a vowel that is somehow not articulated dorsally, which I don't know. So I have it as either laminal or apical, meaning either the blade or the tip of the tongue doing it. So you think of having some infinitely long tongue that you can articulate vowels using the front of your tongue somehow. Sure. And then we have what more or less an English L or an R with appearing voiceless, and then also stridated, and then also with the velarization to give it that back qualities, and then also rounded to all the super fun things. So yay, cursed. There's a lot of weird shenanigans, but yeah, if you want the full extent of things and why I did not go into the syntax here, this is a sentence. So for the story, I decided that Futurama is this like idealistic, amazing show. So they have an idiom that's from Futurama because sure. Not going to go into too much detail over the syntax. Basically just it's every sentence has 3 words, but the words themselves can be embedded using special like subverbs. So this attributive thing there is a verb which takes its object is the thing that an adjective applies to. So it's this weird special verb construction that in theory works. I'm at least not aware of any language that does this. Maybe there is one that cool people know, but it's a kind of interesting theoretical consideration for what could happen if our articulatory tracks were different, if rules were different. So there's obviously like, yeah, conlanging is fun because linguistics is fun and you can just kind of do fun things. But it does also have some actual linguistic considerations, being mostly a thought experiment. Like, I don't think I would be able to publish this in a proper journal, but at least not with a whole lot more explanation. But it is a lot towards, like, I don't know, what if we had 5 mouths? What if, whatever, all of these different things, these different considerations, what could other speech-capable species, in theory, be capable of doing? If robots somehow magically develop speech, they won't. How will that work? And yeah, it can also be used as a pedagogical aid. So if I go back here, for example, this language is modeled off of assembly, which is super baseline programming language. It's like readable binary. If I sat here long enough, I could explain a decent amount of assembly off of the example of the syntax that it uses, because it uses a very similar kind of system to assembly. Starts of sound are encoded with set binary that says, okay, this is the feature and the encodings happen. The grammar uses math from binary stuff. But you can teach using a language. You can create something to teach what you want. All right, yeah. Thank you. I guess we're all questions. So yeah, questions, comments.
Questions for both Robin and Kyle, if anyone has any. Go back up the stage, Kyle.
Do you have questions for each other?
No.
Sure. Okay. I'll start with Robin. I go with you later, but for you, Robin, what was the? I mean, apart from an assignment, what was um the impetus? What's the word I'm looking for here? Something less.
Motivation?
Yeah, there we go. Motivation for doing this specifically. Did you start doing this for other people who want to do this? Did you start doing this based off of the syntax first, or off of the phonology first?
I kind of had. I came into it because I wanted to have a voiceless glottal stop, or sorry, a voiced glottal stop as an accepted sound. And ironically enough, I played with it enough that stopped being the sound that was okay. So mostly off of that, I started with the sound system of things. I knew that I wanted to have a binary mapping that goes into things, and then had a lot of ideas for syntax and stuff from there. If I were to do it again, I would much rather not start with phonology for this, because I had to redo half of it, because the way that the grammar works is it works on the binary, not on the sound, which means that if grammar acts on anything, it acts on all of the sound. Meaning very quickly realized that it was a pickle pain to do any conjugation. So the example sentence that I have took me maybe 3 hours just to piece together all of that and try to make all the sounds. And I'm sure that there's mistakes in that, that at least Yohani would be able to pick out if I showed him the binary. But for most languages, starting with the sound system, kind of building a demo is the best approach. Or writing systems. Writing systems will do. Writing system.
Yeah, if no one else has anything, but absolutely feel free to ask questions. I guess for Kyle then, there was a lot. So a lot of what you showed, of course, was in English. Is there anything interesting you found in in this vein of I forgot what they're called, but all the things you showed, like either NPI or what was the thing where you can be, yeah, in other languages, like something that that might get people interested.
Right. If you happens to be speaking a different language, either you're a learner of that language or a native speaker or heritage speakers, my experience with that is I learned it in English, right? And just like anyone in the syntax course, it was like, wait a second, some of them doesn't work for my native language. And the one I showed you with like the Mandarin Chinese, this one example that came up was like Chinese reflexive, like the self, isn't, it can refer to both people. It doesn't work that way in English. So that's my first question being like, if I ever go into linguistics, English is the textbook example. I'm going to do anything that's not English, basically. So if anything that takes away, think about that, the same examples that we have today, think about that in different languages and see what happens. It might surprise you.
I have a related follow-up question to that. I guess like while you were learning, I don't know if you can remember like when you were learning English, like did you notice like a change from when you were applying like how like those syntactic rules that worked in your native language? Did you do the same patterns in English at first ever? Like
pretty much.
Yeah.
If you recall that example, every student thinks she is the winner. That sentence, if I just do it word by word in Chinese, that sounds really bad. Is that the sentence itself doesn't work. It surprised me that we have to say every student thinks self is the winner. That's how Chinese does it. So I was like, why do Chinese suddenly switch to the South? And then I read a whole paper about, oh, because in the 70s, linguists discovered that there's something called logo for African languages. And that also exists in Chinese, Japanese, Koreans, a lot of Indo-Aryan languages, and also in my colleague's language, Kannada. Like it's very common outside of English. So yeah, cool things to look up.
I sort of have a comment, I guess, on like what Kyle was doing if it wasn't evident in what he was showing, that like each different sentence he showed with the different processes he was showing, those are all different foundational elements of syntax that he was showing us without necessarily going into all of the details behind it per se. And the whole point is to draw you in. And so if any of those sentences you either thought, oh, that was kind of cool, or looked at it and were completely infuriated, or something in between, if it like evoked some emotion, it would definitely be a reason to take syntax. If there's anything I took from that, it was just, you know, if there's anything that kind of did for you, then maybe it's something that you should look into.
Want to jump on that a little more as well with so we were, I think, yeah, actually all of us were in an advanced syntax class last year, and 90% of, or maybe not, a lot of syntax is arguing. Particularly, I have a lot of intuition over sentences that differ from everyone else, and people are not shy to say that. So for example, the shit tried to hit the fan for me is perfectly fine. Because for whatever reason, my English likes personifying things. So personifying the shit is a-okay. So if you even disagree with like whatever intuitions that linguists have, that's a wonderful reason to take syntax, because you can disagree and not just straight up be wrong because you're disagreeing with the paper. It's an ongoing debate that's seeking heavy arguments and, in my opinion, somewhat proofs, but
It
Do you
is.
think linguistics is a math degree?
it is
It's not, I promise. You don't have to do that much math.
that much.
Just a little bit.
Basically, yeah, so
Oh, I guess this is just a fun question for that language up there.
Mhm.
You tried playing the sounds all together.
I don't think I can create most of those. It is beyond my technological expertise to be able to create these sounds
I'm
personally.
just wondering, because you can, if you play them together, you can.
Some of them.
But no, some of them you can't play together, but on a computer,
Yeah,
you can.
a handful of like removing a voice bar from vowels, for example. Like there are languages that have voiceless vowels. They're not super common to be by themselves. But most of them you can in theory do. Some of them are just straight up impossible, and it would kind of just sound cursed, but I'd be interested at least to try to play around with sound waves enough to just.
Phonological rules, maybe.
If anyone wants to try and read it, I'd be very impressed.
Yeah, I will actively pay you if you can read that.
I'll try just for the fun of it. Yes. Because this sounds like a mess. I'm sorry.
Your eyes aren't aggressive.
I know.
I know. Oh, it needs to rattle from the throat.
Oh. Okay, I couldn't do that.
But then also be right next to something voiceless.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Yeah, it's bad.
Great, thank you.
Okay, so up next is, now we were originally supposed to have a I'm sorry, I don't want to mispronounce the name.
Zoe.
Zoe. Zoe was supposed to present virtually. She is currently doing stuff with speech language pathology. But due to a short notice scheduling conflict, she couldn't present actively today. So instead, she's been very kind to me to actually provide a video of her presentation. So you'll give me a few seconds.
me share this. Yeah.
Hey, hi everyone. Today I'm going to be talking a little bit about speech language pathology, often just called SLP for short. I'm going to go over what speech language pathology actually is, the scope of practice for SLP, and why studying linguistics in undergrad might be valuable as a foundation if you're interested in this career path. But before I get into that, I'll just quickly introduce myself. My name's Zoe. I started at Western in 2019, and I really had no idea what I wanted to do when I first started. All I knew is that I loved languages, I loved learning about languages, problem solving, and working with people. And so, being indecisive, I studied linguistics and business in undergrad, not even having really decided what I wanted to do by the time I graduated, to be honest. I worked in marketing and market research after I graduated, and then decided to apply for a clinical master's in speech language pathology. And that's where I am now at U of T. Um, and yeah, so let's get into the nitty-gritty of what is actually speech language pathology. You might think of maybe someone with a lisp or stuttering disorder, seeing a speech pathologist to deal with these kinds of issues. But the field is actually a lot broader than you might think. And speech language pathology, to give a definition, would just be a field within healthcare and the education systems concerning the assessment and treatment of a variety of disorders involving language, speech, cognition, and communication. Really anything involving the vocal tract. So what this means is a number of things for our scope of practice. Firstly, language, which refers to how to apply the rules of language, like grammar, syntax, morphology, which you'll get into in this Intro to Linguistics course. And so, for example, you might be working with children who have developmental language disorder or older adults who have had a stroke that might have affected their language processing or production systems in their brain, and that has in turn affect their capacity to use grammar, and you might be rehabilitating that as an SLP. Communication refers to how we use language in a variety of contexts. So it's common to work with clients with autism spectrum disorder on communication skills because that's a common difficulty that people with ASD face. Speech refers to the actual productions of sounds and language. So this is your phonetics and phonology. Could be working with kids or older adults with apraxia of speech, or kids who might be delayed in acquiring certain speech sounds, or someone after surgery, like a glossectomy, for example, might have lost some capacity to produce certain sounds because of the nature of the surgery, might be helping them get back to their pre-morbid level of speech, or just a best approximation of what their new normal is. Literacy is pretty self-explanatory, but this is helping with written language, so reading and writing. This is very common in the school system. Fluency refers to stuttering and general communicative competence. Voice, we're talking about pitch, loudness, and the quality of sounds produced in the larynx when we're talking about voice impairments. So you could be working with someone after a tracheostomy surgery, they have a tube basically in their throat that affects whether or not they can produce voiced sounds and also the loudness of sounds they can produce. You also could be working with trans clients on gender affirming voice therapy, working on the pitch, lowering or raising the larynx, depending on the target pitch that you're looking for. feeding and swallowing. This is one that a lot of people don't realize SLPs help with, but since we're really masters of everything vocal tract, you feeding and swallowing falls under our scope of practice. So this involves rehabilitating muscles of the vocal tract after a brain injury, surgery in the vocal tract, or even working with mothers and their newborns on breastfeeding. Some other things that could fall into an SLP's practice are things like accent modification or reduction. I know an SLP that's actually consulted on accents and language disorders represented in TV shows. SLPs can also help with other cognitive functioning disorders like executive functioning or issues with memory or problem solving. Again, common post-stroke or with children who have other language impairments. Where do SLPs work and who do they work with? You might be asking yourself. Well, as you can kind of gather from our huge scope of practice, SLPs work with people of pretty much all ages, newborns, older adults, teenagers, toddlers, and SLPs help people communicate more effectively and improve their quality of life in a number of settings. So schools, you'll work with a lot of kids with speech sound disorders, language delays, or social communication skills. In hospitals or rehabilitation centers, SLPs work with patients recovering from strokes or brain injuries or surgeries affecting speech or swallowing. In private practice, you can pretty much see anyone in the spectrum depending on the specific scope or type of population that the private practice is targeting or interested in working with. You can also go into research or academia if you're pursuing SLP. So that would be exploring maybe how language develops, some of the etiologies of different disorders relating to language communication or speech, how speech is processed in the brain, or developing technologies maybe to assist with communication. And SLPs, excuse me, work really closely with teachers, doctors, physiotherapists, occupational therapists, social workers, and families. So teamwork is a really, really big part of this profession as well. Some of the benefits of studying linguistics, I'll just quickly go over. These are some of the ones that I personally have seen. I'm sure there are more that I've missed, but this is why I studied linguistics, having thought maybe this would be something I would want to pursue later in life. Um, so I think linguistics is obviously helps you gain really relevant knowledge for SLP as a profession and also equips you with, in my opinion, really unique problem solving and critical thinking skills. You'll be able to identify patterns and be able to think really analytically and critically about language use and structure in a way that you would absolutely not with studying any other major or any other field. And most importantly, linguistics is really interesting. If you're passionate about languages, if you're really interested in the in linguistics, then you're gonna have a lot of fun studying and it's gonna make school so much easier. So that's also why I did linguistics as one of my majors. Okay, and that's pretty much all I have prepared for today. I wish I could have been there live in person or live on Zoom. So I regret not being able to answer your questions, but I put my email here up on the screen. If you do have any follow-up or want to ask me for advice on SLP, I'm happy to help. So just shoot me an email. I invite you to take advantage of my offer, and I hope that this was helpful for either those who are thinking about it or just introduced you to a field that you were maybe unaware of before or didn't really know a lot about. So thank you for listening, and I hope you have a great rest of your day. Okay, bye guys.
Bye.
Well, if you do have any questions, of course, you put your email up, and this is recorded, so it'll all go up on the course site as well. So if you want to go back to find the email as well, it will be there. Okay. Yeah, I know I saw this. So there's one last person, it's me. I'll try to be as quick as possible, and then feel free to ask questions of me or just any of the grad students, any of the TAs, about what they're doing, just linguistics questions in general. We're all open for questions here for basically until you guys are either done with us or until 5 o'clock hits. All right. Now let's hope this goes well. Go. Much. Go away. Oh. Sorry. The sensitivity on this thing is lovely. Click. Thank you. Okay. We are live and online. Okay. So I know the title says lacus. This is I've cut down my co-presentation with Professor Lamars from lacus from 20 minutes to 10 minutes. So for the first half of this presentation was theory. Because I don't want to bore you guys with the theory. Just like the thing I introduced you to, just assume it's true for the sake of the presentation, and you can like base everything on that. Okay, so first of all, I'll just give you a brief overview of logical labeling, and then I will talk about the computational model. Oh yeah, that's what I'm here for. I write the code. I make things. So logical labeling, quickly. First of all, according to logical labeling, the grammar doesn't care what the word means or how it acts, just how it looks or sounds. Now, small caveat, there is a small set of functional words that have very important jobs, and these are basically primitives for the theory. So a word like dog doesn't actually mean anything according to the grammar, but a word like the or is are important words, and they do important tasks. In general, actually, is a very important linguistic word. There's a lot of papers I had to read on whether or not it has 4 things, 2 things, 1 thing. Anyways, secondly, words act differently based on how they're combined, i.e., aligned with each other. And finally, words get the meaning after the grammar is done, when we start asking which configuration out of the ones we've just made actually makes sense. So, quick example, the words get the meaning after grammar. So if I say the white car, one of these cars is white car. In this case, it is what the theory calls narrowly aligned, where white is talking about a property of the car itself. Now, the white car. None of these cars have the color white, but if I said the white car, I'd be talking about the red car because it belongs to White Corp or something. Here, instead, white is evenly aligned. What that means is instead of targeting a property, it's kind of a name tag on something. The car might not be white, but it has the big word white written across the side. If I said this and that was the case, that's probably the first thing you jump to. Okay. Theory over. You don't really need to. Robin is probably the only person who actually wants to see these. There we go.
I deleted this information from my brain. 1 second.
Right. Okay. So now the model. This is, and I'm marketing this to the computer scientists that are hopefully in this course. Please be more than just me. This is what got me interested in linguistics, or got me into the masters, is working with basically computer models. So the model itself is a computer program. It takes a series of forms, now it puts all the trees, all the different combinations,
these forms could be organized into, and then each of these trees represents a different reading of these series of forms. Now, not all these readings actually make sense, and that's where we get into the asking the world part and what things do. So, if we go with now x and y here are just variables; they can be anything you want. If we said x is y and we gave that to the model says, okay, 5 ways that you can put that together, and that's what they are. You don't need to understand these trees. Now, note here that these x and y don't actually mean anything yet. These are the model then basically tell like, okay, these you give it the words, and then it says use the possibilities, and all of these can be found in English. So, for instance, all of these make sense. So Venus is bright, Venus is phosphorus, based on how they're combined, some of these, and how they make sense. But if we start throwing at words, not all of them will make sense just right out the gate. So first look at the model. If I throw the white dog is Fido, that sentence. The model says 6 different ways to do this. Or the theory, therefore the model I've written says 6 different ways to do that. You can see the trees there. And that's based on health. And when you look at those, those are the 6 different predictions that we'd actually start reading. No, not all of these make sense, and that's okay to start with. Yeah, some of them don't make sense. Fido being an adjective. Usually we don't use Fido to describe a property of something. This is where the second half of this model comes in, where we start asking it, we start looking at which one of these do make sense. So, how the model works. This is the computer sciencey part, and if anyone's interested, I can show you guys code later, but I don't have it in the slides. So, step 1, the input. The white dog is Fido. We throw it a string of words, just a series of words, nothing else, no other information, and it starts from there. Step 2, find the functional words, find the important things that have important jobs in the theory. In this case, we got the and we got is. This happens at the very beginning because because according to the theory, these are very important. Next step. Now we've figured out what our important words are. We got the rest of them. Now we need to figure out what those do, and that's where we start generating different ways to put these together. And this is, at least according to the theory, how we gather all of these and then we start trying to pare them down later. Now there's a lot of debate going on about the theory, so just believe me for this presentation, and that's about it. But I'm trying to prove this. I haven't proved it yet. So if we throw the white dog Fido, then we get 6 different ways to put that together. The next step is to once we have all the possibilities, put grammatical values onto it. Now that we know how they're connected and how we put them all together, what do they do? So here we have a laser pointer. Lovely. Laser pointer. Okay. So now that these are put together like this, so dog and white, because they are what the theory calls narrowly aligned, the white is talking about a property of dog as opposed to something else, and because dog is a noun, for other theoretical reasons, how do you describe something about a noun? An adjective. Now that we have all these options, how do we figure out which ones are the actual ones? So, oopsies, I went too far. There we go. So if I throw in the phrase deep water is very cold, the model puts out 20 things. Most of those are wrong. Everything here to this side is completely wrong because it treats water as an individual thing and not everything. So the model then looks at everything it's generated and goes, okay, which ones of these actually make sense? And then we get just this one here. Out of all those 20, just this one here. And that's how we start cutting down. And this is kind of where my research gets into is testing these and figuring out which of these actually appear in real speech. Work with me? Thank you. Okay. So here is the model in real time. Basically, I give it, green's going to show up badly here. So deep water is very cold. It generates the 20 trees and then it generates this. And that's probably going to change in just a second. Yep, there we go. Okay. So this is the model where I give it a bunch of text. It does all of its analysis. It creates all the trees, generates all the possibilities, and then it checks to see which one of these makes sense. Now, unfortunately, our model isn't omnipotent yet. So instead of having a proper ask society, does this make sense? I have to settle for put down the grammatical values and then look into a text file and into a little document and see which of these makes sense and only keep the tree if every single word that I've put makes sense given that huge configuration file that I gave it to start with. And that's the part actually both of it's what I'm working on. But this testing is my grad research, is taking all the trees it generates, throwing them at 1,000,000 sentences, and then figuring out how many of those sentences did I actually find a prediction, did I actually find a correct match for in the model, how many didn't, and why did it go wrong for the ones that went wrong. So, oh, and there's the references. So, now unfortunately I didn't show you a lot of code, but usually that's what I'm doing. I'm face first into the code. The kind of person you turn the lights on and my eyes go blind for a few seconds. Okay. Now unfortunately Zoe's not here, so it's just questions for me for a little bit and then questions for everyone.
So say thank you first.
Oh yeah.
Yes, I have to ask, any way of putting limits on the production rules to lower the number of candidate trees?
Good question. That is in part what those important words, what those important functional words do. So if I had so we had deep water is very cold. And because that important is in there, we can really split that into two different kind of just completely arbitrary trees that we can then put together in certain ways. If we didn't have that, for instance, I think we'd actually jump up to, I want to say 240 or some odd trees, because we have a larger than two to the 2 exponential generation on these things, because there's certain ways to put them together. But past those important words, I can't really restrict anything because the whole point of the model is to be as close to the theory as possible. So my job here is really less about making up the theory and figuring that out, and more given the theory, write the model and test it. So if you want to do anything like that, continue linguistics. No? That's okay. It's not for everyone. Yes.
Has something like this, like a similar model, been created before, or?
No, mostly. To my knowledge, no one's made a. Okay, no, I should put a caveat on that. No one has tried to create a universal theory of grammar and make a model for it. There is something called generative grammars or rule-based grammars, which you might see in syntax, and I think when do they do the X-bar?
First year, kind of.
Okay, so whenever you start seeing X-bar, It's the kind of idea that, so rule-based grammars are, I have a marker, thanks. You have, like you can have a, for instance, take the idea of a noun phrase. That's an R. Where'd the erase? Oh, there it is. A noun phrase. But you could have, but taken any or given any regular noun phrase such as white cat, for instance, you can actually make that into large white cat. So that would be adjective and then the noun phrase that you put after that. So these exist, but they're not very good at describing all of language. Because a lot of people have tried to implement these in various ways. And in terms of testing a theory itself, there are other people have made computer models of different theoretical aspects of language, but they haven't been so down to the bone as grammar has. So I think one of them was it was talking about there was one on humor actually, making a model of humor, which as a computer scientist is funny to me. So I'm interested in that one. And there's others where where they're making a computerized model of the semantics of a certain thing in Spanish. But that doesn't get down to the grammatical level or as deep, and it also doesn't kind of try to describe a massive amount. So in the end, we are very early in this, in that we also only really, the model only really works for English at the moment, based on some of the innate language features to English, such as if you wanted to describe a dog that was white, you'd say white dog, not dog white. Things like that. But the eventual intent for Professor LaMarche is to make it all encompassing. Anyone else? Cool. Okay. Now, questions for any of the grad students, any of the TAs, and this can be anything you want about linguistics, vaguely tangentially related to linguistics. You can ask me how I got into how I got here. Or you can ask them how they got here. Anything you want. And yeah, but if you're answering a question, you might want to walk up here so the camera actually sees you. Apart from that, thank you, everyone.
Walk up there now.
Yeah, you can walk up there now if you want. Go back. Okay.
Stand in the middle.
Can I have a chair?
Sure, take a chair.
I don't want to stand.
Do you guys want to come? You can answer questions.
Yes.
No, you don't have to.
Just gonna sit on this place.
I could have had a wheelie chair.
I don't want the wheelie chair.
I was there.
Oh,
Sorry, I always have a question, my bad. But I'm wondering, I heard you do computer sciences with linguistics.
Yes.
And I'm currently a health science student. So I was wondering if there's this matching of degrees or interest. Is that common in linguistics? Or
Very.
100%.
is it usually just linguistics, like the speech person?
Now, how many, because I think you guys will know, how many of us grad students actually came from an undergrad in linguistics?
Only linguistics?
Well, I don't think
I think
really any of us are only.
I think Kyle.
Other than Kyle, no.
But the other 8, we all had other degrees.
Yeah. Like a lot of us either did a kind of a multi major situation. Some of us, even in the course of it all, I think I'm probably the only one of us that actually took 1027 when you were supposed to take 1027. I know Audrey took it in third year. Oh, yeah, you might have.
I think I'm the
But
closest
anyway.
to just linguistics because my other major is only
That's
English.
So yeah, probably you and Kyle. But anyway, like there are so many of us who have done this unconventionally or with something else. Yeah, so it's definitely not uncommon.
I think health sci is common too, actually, because people who are interested in speech pathology will combine health sci. Like I'm pretty sure Kate is doing a major in health science and then another module that's something linguistic, or like I think for people interested in speech pathology, specifically health science is also like a common mashup. But yeah, I think very few of us graduated from only linguistics. I think that would be actually rare more than like.
Yes.
Yeah, for sure.
I did computer science as well. I'm a very different side of that. So I'm like very, very heavily on the formalist and mathy side. So I like technically have a CS degree, but like I don't know, I took like fourth year like math courses and a bunch of random logic crap and philosophy stuff and like I don't know, I really don't enjoy coding. It's on I like only the pure theory of things and there's ways to combine everything and
I will say too, that's a perk. It's a perk of our program and the way that specifically Western runs our masters is that the goal is that it is multidisciplinary. So like if you even look on the graduate homepage, like for the linguistics program, if you look down the left side, it basically gives you all of these other programs or other master's programs like psychology, computer science, the faculty of education, like all these different things to give you different options of courses that you could take as electives along with your master's program. So like I took a course with the faculty of education. If I had space in my life, I would have probably taken another one with them. So you'll see that a lot. Like I think Yohani right now isn't actually taking any courses with the linguistics program. He's literally taking, yes, exactly. So like that is the beauty of this is that you really can combine things. And I think also to kind of add to that, it's kind of a unique way to approach linguistics because I think a lot of people get it in their heads that SLP is the only option. And I think it's important to remember that it very much is not. Like there are so many different ways you can get involved in linguistics. Like I think for most of us sitting in this room right now, like of the master's students, SLP isn't our route that we're taking. And so I think that's something to consider. And it's definitely helpful to have conversations with people like us who aren't maybe taking what people would consider to be the conventional route post linguistics. But yeah, there are so many options out there. And if anything, I would encourage you to keep your options open. Because as much as it can be fun to get one idea in mind, you might be closing yourself off to something that you could fall that much more in love with. So
we had two colleagues who are not here to speak about their situation, and Anya left early, the first speaker. So she came from the side of psychology, I believe.
Yeah.
And she took some third-year courses and also French linguistics, and she now moves into MA in linguistics, but her current topic has to do with philosophy side of English. Another person, Elena, a new MA student who's incoming. She did with second language education and also second language acquisition, I think. So both of these, that was her strong foe, and she also came with a SLP background, I think from Windsor, right?
I'm here, Kyle, if you want me to talk about it.
Oh yeah, go for it.
Okay. Hi guys, I didn't have a chance to introduce myself before. Like Kyle said, I'm Elena. My background was in modern languages, so the majority of our linguistics was focused in second language acquisition, and I also did psychology. I think maybe Kyle might have mentioned that. Yeah, I did have a strong background in SLP, and the research that I will eventually be putting forward will most likely be centered around combining linguistics and SLP. And I'm also the one that marks your guys' weekly exercises. So if you have any questions about that, you can ask me at any time. Email me.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it's better for the speaker for the. Yeah, so Gian, another of our colleague, she's I think also in the Zoom.
Yeah. If she's willing to speak, she might be a little busy.
Okay.
But it's totally up to her.
She's also a teen.
She came already with like what is a discourse analysis of like that set of stuff, like the semantics of idioms. She already had a PhD degree from Korea, so she studied. Yeah, she has a full PhD, and she can basically she can teach Korean in a university. And,
Cool.
Yeah, so personally for me, although I ended up doing only quote unquote linguistic. In my undergrads, it was a bit unfortunate that they wrote out a program in First Nation languages of like languages on the west coast side of Canada. Unfortunately, that program was fresh. It was in my third year, so I don't have enough time to complete it for like a double major. So, but I was thinking of heading that direction, which if I eventually do a formal like field work of that kind of languages with indigenous communities, that would be a good like strong minor to have. But unfortunately, I'm stuck with this. So
If you want to do field work too, there are classes like that in the later years. That's kind of my area. Tanya Granadillo, she offers a class in field techniques in third year, I think, where you get to basically re-engineer a language from scratch. So there's a speaker who comes in, they speak in a language that no one in the class will know. She usually does a survey to make sure that's, not interference, and then you basically transcribe live and you try and figure out the grammar, you try and figure out the sound system, like the words, all of it. And you even do the interviews yourself. So you reverse engineer a language, like imagine like a first contact scenario, that kind of deal. And I think that one's a really good it's very challenging, I will say, but it's a really good exercise in like applying all the stuff that you learn in the earlier courses, and also like actually understanding how those pieces fit together, because you're sort of like figuring them out yourself rather than just like studying a language. So I highly recommend that course, guys.
It's really fun. Sorry.
It is.
yeah,
Yeah, it's really fun. I've taken it twice.
it's challenging, but it's really fun.
It changed the language every year.
After and even I'd say in part second year, linguistics kind of just becomes whatever you enjoy about languages. If you like all the super heavy theory, cool, there's some theory courses for you. If you absolutely despise writing IPA,
You don't have to do it ever again.
well,
Okay.
you don't have to the same degree in the same way, but you don't necessarily need to like worry too much about like, oh, I hate writing X bar trees.
Yeah.
I can't do a linguistics degree because you don't really have to touch it if you don't want to.
It's completely normal to have a bias. Like I'm heavy on the syntax semantics. For me, like phonetic is interesting, but I don't want to be graded on that subject. I'm terrible with phonetics.
That's it.
But I still like to learn about it. But saying everyone has a bias in like a specific topic, so tailor that to whatever you want to pursue in your MA if you ever want to do that, or even professionally as a SLP, right? So look into the specific niche that you're looking for.
Yeah, and you can do other some linguistics courses offered in other languages as well, particularly French and Spanish here. I think there's one at Huron for Japanese. I think there's a Japanese linguistics course. I heard that from one of my students, so I can't verify that because it's not main campus. But if you're interested in Spanish as well, we do have linguistic courses offered in Spanish and French as well. So you kind of generally, I think they're mostly taught. At least the Spanish ones were mostly taught in English, or they're cross-listed, so you can take it without knowing Spanish, but some of them are required, so.
This question comes from.
Yeah, hand up there.
I have something because I can't see everyone. I don't know if would anyone be in psychology? Any of the students that is taking this course in psychology?
You couple now?
Yeah.
Okay, one.
Couple. I found as a double major who was in psychology and in hi everyone, someone who is also in psychology, because we were talking about other disciplines as well. Linguistics to me was very helpful in psychology, specifically when it came to cognitive psychology, because cognitive linguistics, when you talk about language and cognitive psychology, you really go into the parts of the brain if that's what you're interested in, or if you're in neuroscience. And with linguistics, having that linguistic background, it really helps you grasp the concepts behind that part of psychology a lot more. Like, for example, when you talk about Broca's area and all that kind of stuff. So if that's your interest too, and you're in more like neuro or more in like psychology, and you want to, eventually provide some sort of psychotherapy for that, linguistics is very, very, very helpful for that too. Like, that was a complete game changer for me in the course. I was much more knowledgeable about the linguistic side of things, whereas I found some of my other peers were more knowledgeable about only the psychology part of things. And to me, I was able to provide to my whole class the other perspective, which really helped them in their knowledge of psychology as well, to have that linguistic side, if that makes sense. Yeah.
Any other questions? Doesn't seem to be anything on Zoom yet. So I'll give it a little bit if someone raises their hand.
Mostly first years, or I'm always curious, like if the people in this course are mostly first years, or if you guys are older students. Who's in first year?
Oh yeah, wait. One second, you're in the corner.
Okay. Yeah. Was this an elective for you guys, or did any of you come into this course like knowing like, hey, I want to do linguistics?
Hands up if you're in linguistics.
Yes. Okay. Yay. That's rare. There's very few of us.
Third or fourth year?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Definitely an elective, unless you want to switch, taking a couple extra years. Could be fun.
I have a question about we learn about the synthetic language and the isolated language. But lots of isolating language, the word is point one, point two, jump to point two. No, it's different like English. Word is a line. So I found if we use IPA like a later symbol to express isolate language. It's a little bit. It's very easy to confuse.
Okay, to clarify, are you talking about isolated language?
Yes.
And you're saying it will be difficult for IPA?
No, it's I can translate to IPA, but if we put it in a sentence, it's easy to confuse because like Chinese teachers, like Chinese, we write like a photo, like a picture to distinguish them. But if we translate to the letters like word, like English, it's just like spelling it. Pinyin is a little bit hard to understand.
The writing system.
Right.
Yeah.
But we usually have a distinction between writings and the language itself, right? So, what's the concern here with Chinese writing? So you're saying that
Kyle, I think sorry to interrupt, if I understood maybe your question, going from knowing the writing system of Chinese to having to transcribe with the IPA symbols, which are Romanized, like are usually mostly like Roman symbols, and that line up pretty closely, even with spelling in English, but that maybe if you're transcribing something like Chinese, you're not used to using the separate characters in the way that we do. Like even if English and transcribing an English sentence in the IPA are different, the differences are actually pretty minute. It's going to be little tweaks of like some sounds we represent with two, but if you're writing in Chinese, I think you're trying to say that the way that you represent it in a written form is super different from the way we do, and the IPA is kind of Eurocentric. Is that what you're, okay.
are you saying that if we have like a character for human and I have to transcribe it in Chinese, like you think that like in IPA, like this to this?
Yes.
Okay, so you're saying that it's hard for character to sound?
I mean, I can do it translate to IPA, but after I translate to IPA and create a sentence, a word is easy to confuse.
Yeah, of course. Because at least Mandarin Chinese is full of homophones, and that's kind of expected. well, it's not the only language with that issue. So some other languages, even without the what we will call like the semantic writing systems, do have a bunch of different homophones. Like Koreans also have that. Do be aware that isolate usually are used not for writing system. We use it for morphology, like how words are composed. It has less to do with the writing system. It has to do with how the words are composed. Chinese is typically said to be like an isolate in terms of morphology, but that's not talking about the writing system. It's talking about how the words are formed. Because they say that English, to some extent, have that kind of mix in, and also future notes.
That also kind of like with the homophones, that confusion can happen and even in English, like if you're writing oh, these markers are really dumb. That still a green?
Specifically green.
Yeah, better than the red one. I don't know, if you have like two, you don't know whether that's this word, if it's this word, or if it's this word, just by looking at this, the IPA. So this kind of problem can arise more in languages that have more like homophones, or especially if you're dealing with like a tonal language. Usually we'd have like superscript symbols to represent the tones as well. Obviously that's not a feature in English, but that would be something that you would need to do for Mandarin.
For example, for the word for humans, right? If we have to transcribe the tone, usually there are several strategies, but so we'll do 2, 4. That's one way. Or the other way is to use this notation to say it's rising up like that. That's the cool fact is that this is actually invented by the Chinese linguists. So it's called what is the 5-degree tonal system? One uses 5 or 1 to means lowest tone to highest tone.
It's possible because it's amazing, like it can be difficult. So usually that's why usually there's some sort of like you'd write the orthography next to it, or you'd give some sort of context to explain what the word is if there's any sort of ambiguity.
So in linguistic paper, especially for these type of languages, but actually for all languages later, they start to have to put what we call glossing, which is to mark the meaning of the word. So they'll do this. If you're reading an English linguistic paper on Chinese, they'll write it like this way. If it's French, they'll have to do this. Usually, when I read linguistic papers, sorry, French word. Yeah. Usually, if you read whatever that language is in that native language, they have their own like native spelling. So I've read that. So you don't do that for English. So if you have an English text, you usually don't have that because the meta language of that paper is English. So when I read Chinese, linguistic paper about Chinese, they usually don't have glossing. They don't need to because we understand the language. So that's the point. So does that answer some of the questions?
Any other questions? It is just about 5 o'clock, so I think
That's okay. We can finish.
Yeah, we can finish a little early if anyone else says anything.
Thank you.
Why terrible fair going on?
Thanks everyone for joining. Good luck with the rest of your course.